My presentation is on a study about children with dyslexia and how action video games can improve their reading skills. The article was titled, Action Video Games Make Dyslexic Children Read Better. Background. About 10% of children have difficulty learning how to read. They have difficulty with comprehensive problems and sounding out words, which are all associated with dyslexia. Researchers are still trying to figure out the reasoning and why it takes place. The remedies of dyslexia are highly discussed. Some remedies include phonological and orthographic training. Phonological training is when somebody is asked to sound out a word. Orthographic training is understanding how the words are structured. To have one or the other, you have to understand the other, which is hard for some of these children with dyslexia. The hypothesis for this research was children playing video games improved on their attention ability, which therefore improves dyslexia. The purpose of this study was to demonstrate that dyslexia is improved with the use of video games. They were tested by two different video games, action video games and non-action video games. The study wanted to prove that individuals who play a certain amount of video games have improvement in their reading ability, attention span, and their accuracy of reading. They wanted to prove that the attention span is increased by the use of certain video games. Lastly, they wanted to see what are some causes that could be linked to dyslexia and what part of the video game helps these kids improve their reading skills. The study part of this research were two different tests. The two tests were T1 and T2. These tests were administered at the beginning of the research, and there were 20 kids involved in these tests. T1 was the test that was administered to the children before the research took place. Every single kid got the same test before they started playing their video games. T2 was the second test. Kids were given this test after they played a set amount of video games, whether it be action video games or non-action video games. T2 was the same exact test as T1, just after the video games were played. The procedure. The researchers started by measuring the phonological decoding of sight of words in reading skills. This was test 1. The researchers wanted to see how kids were spelling out or sounding out words. Sight words are nonsense words that are spelled out in a predictable way, which helps children understand how to spell words out. The researchers wanted to see how good these kids could do this before the video games took place. They then administered the two tests, T1 again before the video games and T2 after the video games. 10 children were assigned to AVG, which is action video games, while the other 10 were assigned to non-action video games. Again, all of these kids were diagnosed with dyslexia. The analysis of this study was attention improvement, which is achieved by playing video games, can translate better into reading abilities, allowing the children to have less issues with dyslexia. Results before the video games. Both groups, action video games and non-action video games, did not differ in the test. They all tested about the same score, and they were tested on their reading ability and attention to reading. After 2 sessions of action video games were played, the children got tested again. And again, this was the same test as T1, the test before the video games. The general reading ability improved in this group. See figure 1A and 1B where the arrows are pointing. The reading abilities were not improved in the non-action video game group. Again, see 1A and 1B. Sight word phonological decoding was also tested, and reading both were significantly improved in the action video game compared to the non-action video game. You can see image 1C. Here are the images from the last few slides. You can see in A, B, and C that action video games were improved while non-action video games were not. The researchers found that cytodecoding mean was higher after 12 hours of playing video games, of action video games, than the improvements which were seen after 1 year of spontaneous reading development. Reading speed was also improved at the 12-hour mark of playing action video games. Reading speed improvements by playing action video games surpassed the improvements of traditional training, which again includes phonological and orthographic treatments. These two treatments are mostly what children and adults use to help with their dyslexia. 70% of the action video game players were one standard deviation above the mean of the non-action video game players when it came to their reading improvements. There was a third test that was administered to some of the kids after a certain set of time after the other tests were completed. T3, the last study where the participants were randomly selected to be retested. The method for this study was 6 out of the 10 students who were in the action video game group got selected to get retested. These individuals had to have no treatment or training when it came to their reading skills in between T2 and T3. The results. There was a non-significant difference which revealed that playing action video games is a practice that will last over time to help people with reading disorders, attention disorders like dyslexia. Conclusion. Attention is hard to study, but this study and others have shown that you can research attention and find ways to improve it. This test also showed that you can efficiently train attention. The biggest problem with dyslexia is the attention problem forcing the mind to jump around the page. This hinders the phonological factors of reading. Playing action video games can help the attention span and the phonological aspects of reading, helping to train your brain.